So we've talked on this format before about the possibilities of what was to come with pure extracts. Uh, Ticker symbol PULL for those that are uninitiated. But I think in our last chat we talked about how everything was lining up nicely for you in cannabis, but that the technology that you had, the facility you had, the skill set that you had, also kind of lent itself to psychedelics when the time came.
Yeah,
Uh, it appears the time has come.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
what for you was the motivating factor in making that change?
It's another line of business for us. So, as you know, we're a plant-based extractor, so be it cannabis or hemp or functional mushrooms or ultimately psychedelics, it all falls into the same basket of extraction and formulation and R&D. We were approached by a host of different functional mushroom companies to help them extract and formulate. Ultimately, you saw the press release, we picked Purica to work with to develop a CBD functional mushroom product that will be into market hopefully by the end of the year. And the next step for that was psychedelics. And when we looked at the psychedelic market, the one area that we saw that there was some greenfield was in manufacturing something that'll have faster onset and faster offset to get the treatment time down. When you look at the folks setting up clinics and whatnot, the biggest gating factor for revenue and client satisfaction is it's about an 8-hour process in general to have a treatment of psilocybin today. So with our partnership with Transpharma, Dr. McGregor, we're working on a nasal gel that will give you faster onset, faster offset. So the treatment could be down to, we're hoping less than 3 hours from a treatment perspective. That, obviously gives the doctor 4 times more output from a patient perspective and treating it. And that's really the catalyst of, we're a commercialization agent. And that was really the catalyst of us coming into the psychedelic market. We were in the functional space, as we rolled that out. And the next step for us was looking at the psychedelic market and saying, how can we bring this really to market and what product would that be in? And our specialization is extracting the mushroom and then formulating something to work faster. And that's exactly what we did.
So, as somebody who has, on an amateur basis, played around with psychedelics and found them very useful for figuring out life's great problems, generally I see those in the space to be touting, "Hey, we have an office that looks like an Apple store that has beanbags in it, and somewhere there's a psychiatrist that can employ ketamine." The reality, of course, is in order to commercialize it, it needs to be a lot closer to what you speak of. To be able to do it in a 3-hour setting means you can do it in an afternoon, not have to book a vacation away. Um, to your mind, does this open up not just possibilities for better monetization for your client companies, but also a lot more consumers to actually get involved?
100%. When we looked at this, my main concern was interesting that they can treat, folks, in an 8-hour period. How many people can take 8 hours off?
Yeah,
Not a realistic treatment option for the majority of the population that actually needs access to this product. To our perspective, working on this to get the times down and the number of treatments up, it gives you obviously a vast larger audience that needs to have this prescribed to them, and they can actually have access to it because it's only 3 hours of a doctor's time versus 8 hours of a doctor's time, and they don't necessarily have to take a vacation day, or they can do this on their extended lunch hour. So it's a more viable option for us that gives you a host of new consumers for the product versus the 8 hour very costly perspective.
for sure. So you recently did a deal to send functional mushrooms to Germany. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It was actually cannabis that went to Germany.
Sorry, cannabis.
So yes, we
My
just
bad.
did a deal. No, that's okay. That's okay. We just did a deal for our first GMP flower that was extracted and sent over to Germany for a trial for a cancer study using some THC and CBD product. So they're testing that product now in the trial. If it's successful, we'll continue to ship into the EU. So we're super excited about that. Our first shipment into the EU early in our commercial life. So we see the EU as a great area for us to continue to expand. We have a lot of partners that we're talking to, but we're looking at Britain as one of the other areas to send product into CBD product into. So there's a whole bunch of different countries within the EU that are cannabis and hemp friendly, and we'll continue to market to those countries.
So what sort of dollar value are we looking at for that deal?
Yeah, the deal for itself is small, a few $100,000 for the shipments. But
Nothing to sneeze
it's
at.
yeah, no, definitely not, over the life of that contract. But we look at it as, the first bastion to going into the EU, right? So, and it'll be tested in a highly scientific manner. It's not for a rec kind of use for it. It's being used in a medical study, so they'll be able to validate our product, pretty highly. So we're excited about that.
So for you, what is your I would say corporate focus like right now? What is the main thing that you guys are looking to execute that would say to you that you're heading down the right path?
I would say twofold. Obviously, the cannabis and hemp business, we're executing, very well from that perspective. We signed a deal with Apple Labs to give us use of their sales license into the provinces while we wait for ours. So we're going full bore on shelf. Should be on shelf, late April. So you'll be able to acquire PULL vapes, tinctures, pure chews, the gummies that we did a deal with Fireball in the U.S. So that will be on market, and we're producing bulk oil for some clients. We're working on a white label program for one of the LPs that will be rolling out in the next 60 days. So the hemp and cannabis business is starting to fire on all cylinders, and that market is getting stronger. As we've seen in the market, the cannabis companies are starting to get some strength again, which is great. And then the new and exciting part is functional mushrooms and the psilocybin research. So the functional mushrooms, we've developed SKUs. They'll be in the Amazon store end of March, beginning of April, for the consumers to be able to buy. So that's super exciting because it's a greenfield business line for us. It won't be a huge revenue producer, but probably about 10% of our revenues, 15% of our revenues for the first, the last of this year. But it gives us a good window into psychedelics, so how we can use that R&D in the functional space to spill over to the psychedelics as we commercialize that product.
Got it. So in terms of your dealer's license, when do you expect that might land?
The dealer's license is a pretty lengthy process, so it could take up to 9 months, to get a dealer's license. We did a deal with Transpharma that's doing our R&D now, so we don't have to wait for a dealer's license. They have the abilities and a license to touch psilocybin, which is a restricted substance license. So we're touching the product, through our partners now. So we don't have to wait. We can manufacture and do our R&D. Obviously in Canada and the US, R&D is the only thing that is legally allowed today in psilocybin. So it's perfect for us. No harm, no foul. We use our partners' lab and technical expertise as we wait for our approval from Health Canada.
So when you get your license, it's helpful, but it's not going to open the waterfall for you, basically.
Yes, we can do everything we need to do through Transpharma. The cost base, they basically do it at a very low cost because it sits on our science advisory board, Dr. McGregor. So we get the use of the lab, at a cost plus basis. So we're pretty cost effective from that perspective, and it doesn't slow us down. And we're working on a couple other partners that have some pretty nifty equipment to do some R&D that we'll be releasing down the road. But there's definitely avenues for us. Not holding our dealer's license to touch the psilocybin really has zero effect on us.
Got it. So obviously the rules around both cannabis and psychedelics are changing in a lot of places very quickly, whether it comes from just decriminalization or legalization. Is there anywhere around the world right now currently where you could do business in the psychedelic space?
So in the Caribbean, it's actually allowed. You can sell micro doses. Obviously, the Caribbean not a huge market. Lots of R&D going on in Jamaica in the psychedelics area. So there's been some good anecdotal information coming out of Jamaica. Obviously, some of their procedures would not necessarily be accepted within North America, so you have to revalidate some of that. But some really good information coming out of that, and a lot of companies have set up shop because the government is so psychedelic friendly. They actually are using their government resources and their labs to help grow and do testing for psilocybin, which is completely opposite from where they were from a cannabis perspective, where they were pretty hands off.
Got it. So in terms of the early months of pure extracts being on the market, obviously, there's been a bit of an up and down on the stock chart. Do you feel like your story is out there fully yet, or is there still sort of a large sector of the investor space that's just placing bets on everything and not really looking into the fine detail where you might
Yeah,
get some win?
yeah, I think we're really seriously undervalued, to be honest with you. The ability to play in both the psychedelic functional mushroom space and the cannabis space, that's obviously revenue producing and cash flowing perspective. I think when you look at our peer set, we get some of the benefit. We're continuing getting more exposure to the investor group, but when I look at our makeup from our corporate mandate perspective, you get the ability to generate real revenue and profit within the cannabis and hemp-based business, and the functional and psychedelics. Obviously, psychedelics is illegal to sell anything. You can only do R&D, so you get the benefit of the R&D side without the risk of not having enough cash or not having a real business underneath you with the functional and the hemp and cannabis space business. So I think when we look at our valuation and the way we're trading, I think we're highly undervalued from where we are today.
Presumably, when psychedelics do open up, at least locally, having an existing license in hand that will likely be the license required to do that business would be a bit of a head start compared to, let's say, back in the early days of the cannabis business, where everybody was flying blind as to what would actually be needed to get through Health Canada's gauntlet.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And we've lived this before through previously with Natura Naturals, and I got licensed that we sold to Tilray, and now having pure license in the cannabis space. We're well known to Health Canada. They trust our expertise. So having that license for controlled substance and be able to produce psilocybin on a commercial basis, we'll be well ahead of the pack, and we know how to extract the mushroom based products. We're doing R&D on different extraction processes for mushrooms, where folks, even if they can get a license in a year, they don't know how to extract the product. They haven't done that R&D work. So we should be well ahead of the pack for sure.
For sure. So is there an aspect of your company right now that you believe, if there was a big neon sign floating above your head, that you'd wish every investor would understand? Like, what would be the 15 words that you wish they'd see?
Best in class from our perspective. We produce in the cannabis and hemp business a full spectrum product, which is now the product that everybody wants to be involved with. It started in California, Las Vegas. Everybody moved to distillate because it was cheap and easy to make. And then once they tried full spectrum and having the terpene profiles and whatnot within the product, that's where we started. That's where, from the gray market, where our roots are from pure, we started in the full spectrum. We've been doing this for several years. It's harder and more expensive for sure, but the one thing that the investors should know is the provincial entities want that product on their shelf. There's not many of us that actually can do it, and there's for sure not many that actually have done it and sold hundreds of thousands of units with little or no issues with it. And it's a hard product to produce for sure. So not knowing that we actually do that, extraction is not created equal, unfortunately, or fortunately for us. So our neon sign would say, we do this really, really well. and that gives us a big leg up when we're extracting functional mushrooms and then ultimately psilocybin.
And I'm guessing that, judging by your news flow, that some of the larger companies that at one point thought we'll just get a machine in the back that goes ding and hire a guy who says he can operate it, that they're starting to understand that there's a real industry there if it's done right, even if it's done outside of the house.
Yeah, actually, we're in discussions with a few LPs for sure that bought extractors and thought they put it on their shop floor and bought
Hmm.
their uncle, right? Stick some cannabis in and you're good to go. Unfortunately, it's all over the floor, no pun intended. It's very difficult to get consistent product out that meets the Health Canada guidelines. The equipment obviously is just one part of it, knowing how to administer. We've done proprietary tweaks to our equipment that we run from Vitalis. If you're not a hardcore extractor and know how to process, garbage in is garbage out. The quality that's coming out of some of these folks, out of the same machinery that we have, is not so good. So they're finding out that they can't keep up to the production flow, and their consistency is very poor. So they're coming to folks like us saying, here, manufacture this SKU for us. It's just not worth the margin hit because we're losing it in productivity and missed shipments.
Fair enough. Going forward, the next 3 to 6 months, like, what do you figure is going to be your champagne popper moment for you in what you expect news to come?
There's going to be a few for sure. Ultimately the product on shelf in the provincial entities will definitely be a champagne popper, because obviously that's big revenue, big profitability from that,
Sure.
and that'll
Yeah.
come end of April. Our functional mushrooms and how we compete against our peers on Amazon will be super interesting for us, and I think we'll actually compare very well. The Four Sigmas and whatnot of the world. I think we'll compare very well to them. That will be interesting, and we have some new innovative products that haven't been brought to the Canadian market over the next 6 months that I think will be real eye openers for our competition, and stuff that the consumer will want to try. So I'm a CPG guy from my background, and new innovative products. There haven't been many, to be honest with you, in the cannabis business. They've been imported from the U.S. Best case, but I think we're on the cusp of releasing a couple of cool things.
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is early in the cannabis era, there was a lot of talk of medical and that being the sole focus of companies. And as soon as the gates were opened, there's very little talk of medical going forward. With which makes two things really apparent to me. Number one, the real business plan all along was the entire market rather than a small market. But also number two, that everyone has taken their eye off that niche of medical patients or seniors that could use wellness products, or guys that aren't looking to get stoned necessarily, of which I think there's a massive market that is looking for product at Shoppers Drug Mart, not at Uncle Fester's Smoke Shack.
No, 100%. So the problem with the medical business model is it's very small. So for the producers, direct shipping for medical is a tough business. You're effectively turning yourself into an Amazon, right?
Right.
So when you can ship recreational, where you ship 10, 20, 30 times the volume, the medical business shrinks or is non-existent. The good thing about it is the medical practitioners for a script still exist. So you can actually be prescribed it and then fill it at your local dispensary that's used for rec, because very similar products are available on shelf. And that's where the line gets a little bit blurry.
Mm-hmm.
CBD is coming on like gangbusters in Canada. Hopefully in the next year or two, the regulations will change and it'll be an over-the-counter product. So you'll be able to get CBD in your local shoppers. And I think that will be a massive change from a wellness perspective, that it will no longer require a script. I use CBD every day. I used to be a minor league pitcher in the day, and I blew out my arm. And as you get a little bit older, that pain comes back, and I administer CBD every day, and it's a real life changer. So you're going to see that wellness business shift into the shoppers over the counter. Obviously, THC will still be sold through the dispensaries or direct, but I think the direct model will eventually fall away, or there'll be specific sites like Shoppers is a great platform where people can go and have their script there and order direct to their home in that model. Having each individual LP have their own mail order effectively online, it's just
It's
not cost
nuts.
effective. No,
Yeah,
it's not cost effective. But a Shoppers model, we do business with Shoppers. They're great. And I think that's a really good model for wellness, and they give out good education, right? It's all about education and how the product interacts with your body, with your medication you're taking and whatnot. And having a body like Shoppers that is a large corporate citizen that's charged with wellness is the best place for it.
for sure. If people will take cold FX regardless of the fact that we don't know if it actually works because it's sold on the bottom shelf at Shoppers. Um, do you see that the psychedelics industry, as you look around you at the various players that are in it, do you see them as being all serious, or mostly serious, or some serious?
I would say some, right? So I would say obviously there's lots of real players in the space. So it's like anything else. The psychedelic market is split up to a host of different characters. Some are very well driven in science or commercialization, like we are. Some are dabbling, some not so much, right? So like everything else. So it's hard for the investor to do their diligence, on those. We're a plant-based extractor. We're not a hardcore R&D shop. We're into this to make a product that will help the doctors shorten the time period. So we're very focused on that. Some groups are less focused for sure, but you have to do your diligence of the management team, what they've done previously, and have they brought products to market. It's a highly regulated product, psilocybin. It's not being sold over the counter anytime soon, down in my lifetime. So it's a medical product. So you have to look at, are these people able to get a medical product to market to the doctors, right? And some of the companies, not so much, right? So some of the companies, 100%, some of the larger cap, psilocybin companies are solid companies edged in science. They're here for the development of a wellness product to help people in PTSD, anxiety, whatever the case may be. Some not so much.
I feel like some of the companies that are in the space are more plugged into the science, depending on how much money they can raise. Like when they raise their first 20 million, they're kind of into it. When they raise 200 million, they're really into it. It really depends on how much business you can actually buy into, right?
Yeah, well, it's expensive too, right? So R&D is very expensive to do, and just little trials are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if they're not well financed, it's hard to stretch a dollar in that space if you don't have the backing. That's why there's several large ones that raised a couple $100 million. They have a lot of runway to do a lot of research, right? So and they're very scienced up. I don't know if that's a word, but there's definitely the haves and have-nots, right? So if they're not that well financed, the reality is they're not doing many clinical trials. To do a lab clinical trials on animals is a couple $1 million, right? So it's you got to be pretty well endowed from a cash perspective to start doing a few of those.
I've done a few clinical trials on Bowen Island over the last few months, and it's cost me hundreds of dollars. I can confirm. Very successful trials, however. So we have a few people that we've got questions around our message boards. One has asked, what are the revenue forecasts for each quarter till year end, and do they have objectives attached?
We haven't released our revenue forecast yet to the public. We're still working with the provinces to get their orders when we come to market on shelf in April. But there is targets in place, internal targets, so we are tracking to them. We believe our orders will track to our revenue forecast, and once we get the provincial orders, we'll be able to give the street guidance on our revenue basis. But
The
we will
market's
have
it's a real moving target right now, I would imagine. It's almost improbable to try and place accurate projections on things the way things are changing week to week.
Yeah, it is tough. The nice thing is the cannabis space, the 2.0, the gummy products that we're bringing to market with Fireball, it has some proprietary packaging, as we talked about before. It's definitely desired by the provinces. It gets rid of their shelf stability issue they had last summer with it all sticking together and the
Hmm.
dosing issue. And then our full spectrum vape cartridges and oil-based product is something that they want. So we're not pushing our products to the province. It's something that they want. So it's a pull, which is nice. And once we get those in stores and the consumer tries them, we get the halo effect from our gray market days. I think sell-through will be pretty robust, so we'll be able to continue to build on our revenue base from there. But everything changes every day in COVID, so we're excited but conservative.
When we first talked, I think it might have been just at the beginning of COVID, where things were a little up in the air. Now with the lost year of Black Plague behind us, when people start coming back to normal life, do you expect revenues to rise, or has the fact that everyone has been stuck at home maybe given the market a bit more of a boost than one might have thought?
What, I go back and forth on this a lot. Some ways there's going to be a lot more people at parties and whatnot, and they're going to, obviously want to partake for
Hmm.
sure. And you've also been locked up. What else is there to do except enjoy, an edible and watch a movie, right? So,
Right.
I think revenues will be pretty constant. To be honest with you, I think you might see a little bit of an uptick just people getting out, wanting to get out of their four walls for sure. So I think there'll be a little bit of uptick. I don't think we're going to see a lot of shrinkage on the amount of revenue that we're doing today because people are so used to using the product on a regular basis. It's now like baseline, right? So from a revenue perspective, I think especially in the summer, I think if COVID kind of backs off a little bit and we get the vaccine rolled out, I think we're going to see a little bit of an uptick of people just getting out and blowing off some steam.
Lastly, if you look at the cannabis consumer market, where do you see growth? Do you think that people who wanted to try it have already tried it at this point? Or is there still a large segment of people out there that are waiting for the right product brought in the right way without any sort of speed bumps in terms of distribution?
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of the population that has not tried it yet. I think that the the edibles and the drink product, as they get more mainstream in dispensary, will be a huge uptick to the business. The people that smoked, 20 years ago, don't want to roll a joint anymore. They want
Yeah,
to, rip a head off a gummy and enjoy the night, right?
right.
So that segment of the population is continuing to growing, and that's really where we see a lot of growth is in that 35 to 55 realm where they was kind of taboo and they're kind of waiting it out. Now they're seeing all the gummy products, the chocolates, the drink product. They're coming into the dispensary and going, like I had a joint when I was 19, like what is this like, right? And the baristas, as they're called, are having a lot of those conversations. And I think we're going to see continuing growth over the next 3 to 5 years in the marketplace as it becomes more socially acceptable. There's still areas of the country where if you say I'm having an edible, you're a druggie, right? And that's just awareness, right? So it takes a while for that to work through the system, but we're definitely seeing, new customers, professionals, moms, dads coming into the dispensaries and saying like, I want to try an edible. The smoking flower is going to be declining, for
Yeah,
the next few years.
yeah, for sure. Well, for those interested in Pure Extracts Technologies, the ticker symbol is PULL. The market cap right now is sitting at a comfortable and I would say reasonable 40.7 million. Certainly in comparison to a lot of your comparables out there, it's a pretty cheap market cap considering the facilities, the licenses, the fact that you're doing business internationally now, the fact that you just opened up on a secondary sector. 40.7 million is in line with very reasonable expectations.
Oh yeah, no, I fully agree with you. That's our calling card. We want to give shareholders value. We're definitely at this market cap, very very cost effective for an investment perspective.
And I would say to you that although your share price has had a little down drag on it over the last couple of weeks, so has a lot of people in the cannabis sector, but your volume remains really high. So I feel like there are people out there that are taking advantage of the dip and starting to stack when it comes to PULL. Um, Man, thanks very much for talking again. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Your answers are always very frank and non-hypey, and I think that's going to do you well in the long term.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right, be good.